Good afternoon and welcome to the Multi-State Collaborative on Military Credits Student Veteran Certification Reengineering Partnership webinar. My name is Jennifer Dahlquist and I am the Vice President of the Midwestern Higher Education Compact. I am filling in today for Sarah Appel, who is our MC Project Coordinator, and she unfortunately is out sick today, but I will be stepping in for Sarah today. A little bit about housekeeping before we get going on the webinar. Questions can be submitted through the chat feature over on the side of your screen, and the follow-up will be done as necessary. The presentation will be shared and posted online at the two following links that you see listed there, which can be found on the MEC website or on our YouTube channel. In addition, I'd like to take a moment to say special thanks to the foundations that have generously supported the MCMC, Lumina Foundation and USA Funds. Without their support, the work of the MCMC could not be made possible. A little background about the MCMC. The Multi-State Collaborative on Military Credits mission is to facilitate an interstate partnership of 13 states and to translate competencies acquired by veterans through military training and experiences toward college credentials. States will exchange information and share best practices in the areas of articulation of credit, certification and licensure, communication, and data and technology. The Multi-State Collaborative on Military Credits has several project goals, and overall we are looking to assist student veterans with completing post-secondary education and assisting with the transition into civilian employment. MCMC has established three broad project goals: to assist with critical life transitions from the military to post-secondary education and then from post-secondary education to civilian employment, to increase post-secondary education completion rates by creating models for the consistent, transparent, and effective awarding of credit for military training and experience that can be scaled regionally and nationally, thereby lowering the cost of education and reducing the time to degree completion. And thirdly, to establish a strong network of support, communication, documentation, and data collection among institutions and organizations for the purpose of promoting shared interests and tracking the efficacy of efforts to enhance service members' educational success. Under the umbrella of the MCMC, we work with 4 work groups, which include the articulation of academic credit, licensure and certification, communication and outreach, and data, systems, and technology. At this time, I'm going to pass the presentation off to our presenter today. I'd like to welcome Doug Falk, who is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer of the National Student Clearinghouse. Doug, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I've been with the Clearinghouse for about 16 years as CIO and have seen lots of changes over those years for sure. I just wanted to acknowledge I'm getting over a slight cold, so I might sound a little stuffy, but I'll try to be as articulate as possible. The National Student Clearinghouse has been providing services to education institutions for about 24 years, primarily the registrar's office and admissions offices as well, and the financial aid office. So we really got our start in 1993 providing federal compliance reporting as it relates to Title IV student aid, where we were letting the Department of Education and lenders and guarantors around the country be informed of student enrollment status as they persisted through their education experience. Either they dropped out or they graduated, et cetera, which of course triggers loan repayment. So we've been in this business for quite some time, and that's the basis for our proposal to the Veterans Administration. So I want to make a couple of comments about the presentation before I get started. So Rick Torres, our CEO, and I have been working on this for about 3 years. And actually next week Rick is doing a very similar version of this presentation at the annual ACRO conference in Minneapolis. So I'm not sure if that's something that you all will attend, but nonetheless, if you do, you'll see the very similar presentation being made there. Another thing is that we at one point in time, this was an actual. We thought we had an actual project in process. We met with the VA. We had our technology teams meeting and starting to initiate things. And because of the fact that over the last 18 months there hasn't been any movement, we're now calling it a proposal. And this proposal is really being led by higher education institutions themselves, and less about the clearinghouse pushing it, because at the end of the day, it's really the institutions that are going to benefit from this, and that's the tack that we're taking. The last point that I wanted to make is I did have a couple of animations in the presentation, which have been flattened out as we go through this. So just bear with me as I work through some of the slides that typically would build. So for today's conversations, really information about the background, how we got here, the overall review of the proposal. We'll talk about benefits, current status, getting involved, and next steps, and how you all can get involved as well. So it was about 3 years ago that we were approached by several institutional registrars from across the U.S. that we work with and have been working with for a couple of decades. These folks on the screen you may know, Shelby from UT Austin, Tom from Stanford, Scott from Wisconsin, and Brenda from Missouri. They are obviously registrars at their institutions, and they approached us about, hey, you helped us solve a problem 24 years ago around data reporting and the complexity of it, and helping us simplify that. Can you help us with our VA reporting process? And that was really the launch of the discussions that led to this proposal. So over the past 3 years, we've had numerous conversations and meetings, starting with, in the fall of 2014, that group getting together and just kind of on the back of a napkin sketching out an initial concept. Then at the annual ACRO conference in 2015 in Baltimore, those same folks got together with a little bit wider group. And we also at that point brought in the Student Veterans of America leadership to review and discuss the opportunity. Then after that, we brought in NAVPA, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, and the SCOs across hundreds of institutions, really kind of validating the proposal. And then ultimately we brought those three groups together along with ACRO and along with the registrars, and we had a meeting with Robert Worley, who heads up the VBA from the benefits perspective. And that meeting was in December of 2015, so just over a year ago, about a year and a quarter ago, we did that, and that's what really launched this. And just before we had that meeting, we had that registrar group take a look at the current process, and they really went to the whiteboard and they sketched it out. And the current process is in the background there, and it's very complex and very long and involves a lot of people. And the wow was the animation that would come in at the end, but nonetheless, it is a very complicated process. And they determined that indeed there was a potential for a better process. So it was really the folks that worked on that are UT Austin, Wisconsin, and Missouri. They presented that to other SCOs from around the country. And they ultimately came up with this version, which is much simpler. And by the way, I can share the actual diagrams of these so that you can blow it up and look at it if you'd like to see that after the presentation. So at the end of the day, we realized that yes, we're in a position to offer a real innovative solution to the challenges that they were having. So what we're doing today is, we're asking schools today to indicate the veteran status indicator with the regular data submissions that we get from registrars around student enrollment and degree data. We are currently collecting course grade credit data for some of the statewide reverse transfer initiatives that are going on. We do have a liaison relationship with the U.S. Department of Education for doing our compliance reporting for institutions. So institutions will set up a legal contract that puts us in the middle there, and we generally partner with registrars and financial aids office, et cetera. And all of our institutions, for the most part, they don't pay for any of our services. They are provided free of charge. So the current process, and looks like the animation didn't come across on this one. I missed that. Nonetheless, the current process, so you have institutions on the left. You have institutions reporting to the National Student Clearinghouse for the enrollment and degree information, and of course we report that to the Department of Ed for compliance reporting. You also have institutions on the left directly reporting to the VA and to military and to other veterans-related organizations around veterans, their enrollment statuses, their progression, their courses and credits, et cetera. So the new process would be the picture on the right that didn't show up, that really had all of the schools reporting to the NSC as a single point, and then the clearinghouse then reporting out to the other entities. So the clearinghouse really does become the clearinghouse of data in the middle, where we can get a combination of education and veteran information and report that out as appropriate to the folks on the right-hand side. So the overview of the proposal. So now we're really talking about, and we've updated this recently to offer assistance with the new statutes and regulations that came out recently. So there's three goals to our proposal, and they're right on the screen. So assisting with new statutes and regulations, improving completion reporting, and then the redesign of the certification and recertification process. And I will go through each of these now. So there are new VA statutes that were introduced recently for new reporting obligations for institutions, and you all are probably aware of these. I'm a technology person. I don't know policy that much, but what's described here are the three that we are offering assistance with on helping institutions comply with. And the first one has to do with the annual compliance survey. The fact that institutions, they have to do this now for if they have 20 or more veterans. I believe that used to be a much higher number than that. And then they have to do that survey not less than once every 2-year period. So our offer was that we could, if we were receiving the data from institutions on veterans, and along with the enrollment and degree information, we could pre-fill surveys with NSC data and help institutions really comply with that new reporting obligation. Secondly, there's a Section 404 that requires education institutions to submit an annual report on the academic progress of students who are receiving benefits. We do this sort of progress reporting today in an application that we call Student Tracker, where since we're getting data from about 4,000 institutions across the U.S., for the most part we know when they're entering a school or leaving a school and transferring to another school. We have that information in our database, so we can provide tracking reporting, if you will, on the academic progress of those students. So we're offering to help institutions once again comply with those reporting requirements. And right now we're waiting on a Dear Colleague letter for more details about what that report might look like. And then lastly, Section 407, which is really about reporting enrollments and programs, which might include group, district, or consortium data to, and this is another area where the clearinghouse is currently enabling consortia to provide that reporting. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later when we get to the completion reporting and how we're enabling that. So the second So the second goal then of our proposal is really around improving completion reporting and the comparison tool for statistics. So these are two parallel processes that are going on today. At the top is our existing process where institutions are sending to the clearinghouse information about completions. So we get each time the college grants degrees or certificates or et cetera, they send us data and we store that in our database. And at the bottom of the screen, again, similar process. The SCOs at institutions are updating the Department of Veterans Affairs through their systems on completion data for veterans that are receiving benefits. So our proposal is a combined reporting solution here where by just adding a few pieces of data to the data that we currently get from institutions, the VA file number, the suffix in addition to veteran / dependent, and the chapter, we would be able to continue to provide degree data reporting to our existing recipients, and we would be able to update the Department of Veterans Affairs on those completions as well. So with that, we get improved efficiency, increased services to veterans, and better data analysis and information. We see this as the easiest piece of work to accomplish right now because we're already receiving all of that data from institutions, and it would really be just a matter of increasing the file and working out arrangements with the VA for how to report that. This is a list of completions comparison tools that are currently in play. You've got the iPad's College Navigator, you've got the Department of Ed scorecard, and you've got one called the Student Achievement Measure. That is one where the clearinghouse is working very closely with institutions in a model where we are able to track first-time reporting for full and part-time students on a bachelor model where we're tracking over 6 years on whether students are persisting, whether they're transferring, whether they're graduating, et cetera. And that is the model that we have proposed to the VA as help in helping with the comparison. So we know the GI Bill comparison tool has been out for some time, and I think the VA has kind of backed off the use of that a little bit, but that's not for me to say. That's what I've heard. And then the next one at the bottom is the Complete College America, and at the very bottom, the Voluntary Framework for Accountability, which the Clearinghouse also helps those institutions in those consortium with the data. On the next page is an example report for the Student Achievement Measure. So this is a report, again, that the Clearinghouse provides. We provide this back to institutions, and then the institution gets to decide what to do with it. So this isn't something that gets posted on a public website where institutions are caught off guard by the data. We give this back to the institution, and then they decide. And again, the whole point of being about the kind of this platform is that they all kind of agree that they're going to publish the data. So in this case, what you have is showing that within 6 years, and this is a national first-time full-time bachelor's model, where within 6 years you can see that 49% graduated, and this is from the reporting institution, meaning the institution that reported the student. And then what you get by using the clearinghouse with this is you see the additional 11% that transferred and yet graduated from another institution. So that's the big difference today, is that the federal graduation rate only reports outcomes for students seeking degrees who start and finish at the same institution. So that's 49%. That's the typical 49%. So by using the clearinghouse and its data, we're getting a more complete picture about what happens with students as they progress through college. So in addition to that, you get the darker blue bar represents students that are still enrolled at the reporting institution, and then the lighter blue 7% are students that transferred out and are still enrolled. So today those would be considered failures, if you will, non-completers. But in our reporting, we can see that those still have a chance of completing a degree. And then this is a very similar report, but for this one it is around full-time associate and certificates. So once again, we've got 30% graduated within 6 years from the reporting institution, but yet a whopping 30% who have transferred and are still in school at other institutions. And again, it is about painting a true picture of what's happening with the students. If you follow the federal model and simply define success as graduating or being enrolled at my institution, you're missing a huge part of the picture. And we can set up a very similar model here with institutions that are providing that have student veterans who are getting benefits, and they want to set up a very similar sort of reporting model. We can certainly help with that. So the completion components we see as really having 3 steps. The first is to simply allow the institutions to opt in to a framework similar to the student achievement measures for comparison tool purposes. That would be one that the clearinghouse is certainly willing and able to help with. The second is having institutions modify their enrollment and degree file submissions to the clearinghouse to incorporate the veteran indicators. So those were the previous slides that I talked about, where we were adding that data to the degree submission. And then the third one is for the VA and the clearinghouse to work together, to get our technology teams together to develop an interface. The easiest one for us to do and for them to do is a batch file update where we give the VA the file, and they could update whatever systems on their side that they wanted to provide for those completions. Another benefit for doing that last step is that we can, I believe the way the veteran success indicator is today is that the student had to have graduated in the last term in which they were receiving benefits. And we know that students continue to go to school when they're no longer receiving benefits, and yet we would still be able to report that as a completion to the VA, and they could get a much better picture of the success and academic progress of student veterans. So the third part of the goal then of our proposal is really I see as probably being the biggest and most complicated, which is redesigning the certification and recertification process by leveraging data flows into the clearinghouse and then to the VBA. So again, we have our existing parallel paths. So at the top, we've got institutions that are currently reporting enrollment data to the clearinghouse, which includes all of the demographic information about the student, name, address, date of birth, et cetera. And so we're getting all of that information today on 98% of the nation's enrollment is coming into our database on about a monthly basis. So we're getting all of that. And again, it's for the purposes of updating the Department of Ed on Title IV eligible or Title IV eligible students and what their current enrollment status is. Likewise, at the bottom, you've got the certification process happening today, where SCOs are updating the Department of Veterans Affairs systems with information about the students as they begin accepting benefits, setting up the biodata, and then each semester with classes and courses, et cetera. So again, we see a combined model. At least if we just start with the biodata first, we have to add some 6 data elements to our existing file feed from institutions. And if we did that, we would then be able to start providing that data feed to the Department of Veterans Affairs so that it really at this point is just cutting down on manual work and cutting down on errors and improving efficiency and ultimately increasing service to veterans. So if we simply begin with the biodata, then we can really talk about a reduction in burden to schools and an increase in benefits to students. And we see this happening in a couple of steps. The first is the VA allowing the clearinghouse once again to work together and develop an interface that allows the VA systems to accept data from the clearinghouse for terminations, for completions, the biodata, and then we're tacking on terminations because we do get that information at the clearinghouse as well. And we see all of these opportunities as stepping stones. So we're starting off with the simpler ones and then graduating into the more complicated ones. And then the second step would really be, again, allowing our teams to work together to develop the eligibility and recertification and certification interfaces between the clearinghouse, since we'll be receiving the data from the institutions, and then interfacing with the VA for the certification and recertification process. So that's really the longest term opportunity because it is certainly the most complex. So what are the implications of these transformation? It's all about the students, and we believe that students would be better served by the institution. The students are going to get their benefits one way or the other regardless of how much work is going on behind the scenes. But if we were able to take some burden off of the SCOs, then we believe that they would be able to focus their time more on helping veterans navigate through their education experience. So we see large efficiency gains simply around the reporting of changes. The VA office, the Veteran Service Office, again, that is being able to be focused on higher order needs for the students. We would be helping develop standards around how the data is reported, and then again, the ease of work required to meet new regulations. What the whole point about error reductions is that in today's reporting process for educational institutions for Title IV reporting to the Department of Education is all about reducing errors. So we receive the data files from the institutions with a full list of their students and their current enrollment status, and we run that through a very complex series of edits that we've developed over our 24 years, and it really looks at, for example, well, what did you report the last time you reported to me? If you reported that they had, what they had withdrawn or they had re-enrolled, et cetera, and we just apply the logic to figure out, gee, should we raise that, flag that as a warning, like have the institution double check that to make sure it makes sense, et cetera. So if a simple example is if you report a student deceased in 1 month, and the next month you report them as full-time, well, we're going to catch that before it gets to the Department of Education. And for us, that's really about accurate reporting and reduction of errors. So now we get into the benefits, and I won't read through every one of these slides. The presentation is available to you on the website already. So really the major benefits for veterans is what this first slide is about. And again, it's all about reducing errors, minimizing overpayments, et cetera, speed, accuracy, timeliness, et cetera. We have some data that says over $400 million in overpayments were made in 2014, which someone we spoke to attributed that to training issues. Now, I'm not going to agree or disagree with that. I'm just stating that's a pretty big number, 400 million, and if our proposal can do anything to reduce that, that would be awesome. This slide talks about benefits to veteran program administrators. So taking the workload off, reducing time-consuming keying of data and manual checking and rechecking, removing that and allowing those folks to do a higher order of work, which is working more closely with veterans to improve educational outcomes. That's where the big benefit comes from. Institutions, it's about efficiency, accuracy, and efficacy. Efficiency around processing time reductions, simplifying the process, reducing errors, faster turnaround, and then for measurements, ease of obtaining program efficacy measures tied to persistence and attainment rates. The VA, of course, would also gain from efficiencies and improving speed and timeliness of changes and reporting. We have had several conversations with the VA. We know they have a long-term solution in mind and goals, and we believe that there is synergy there and that our proposal aligns and even enables their long-term solution. And then, of course, accuracy, accurate completion data from one common source. That would be the clearinghouse, and getting that nice, clean data from us that has been, vetted and processed through our error processing could be a huge benefit to the VA. So now I'll move into what progress we've made, what our current status is, and next steps with our proposal. So in 2016, we had lots of discussion, but no real commitment to action. So a little over, actually it was about a year ago, after meeting with the VA in December, so a few months earlier, we got our technical teams together. So I took a team of folks down to Washington, D.C. to the VA headquarters. And the goal was really to start laying out, okay, again, completion data. It's the simplest opportunity for us. So let's talk about how we might get completion data from the clearinghouse to the VA. And by the way, in order for us to do that, we certainly would be working with our institutions, and we certainly would be getting their agreement for us to report completion data to the VA. And we do that today with every one of our services that we offer. It is always driven by the institution. We believe it is their data and not the clearinghouse's data, and whatever we do with that data, we must get their approval for. So we would enter into a contract addendum with institutions that would enable us to report on their behalf. So the meeting on February 5th, 2016 raised a lot of questions by the VA, really around policy, cost, capacity, how they were going to staff it. We knew they had a big project, VA-CERT, that they were working on, and we knew that was a top priority. But so for us, it was about, well, how can we do this in the simplest way possible without disrupting that work that was going on? So we had scheduled a follow-up meeting in late February, which was ultimately canceled by the VA, and that was the last real meeting that we had with them because, again, it has been about concerns around a lot of questions that had yet to be answered around, the policy, the cost. They were concerned about whether we would be able to do the reporting from a legal perspective. But again, our answer to all of those questions was that we are doing exactly the same thing today with the Department of Education, and that has been working successfully. So we followed that meeting up with again the third annual meeting of ACRO that we presented at. We had a pre-conference seminar, and we had 50 plus institutions in attendance. 20 signed up almost immediately as pilot beta testers, and again, we had a lot of momentum going at that point. In June of 2016, we made another offer to VBA around the completion data by offering up the comparison tool that we talked about, where they would be able to do a student achievement measures like platform for institutions. So we offered to provide that, and then again in August we reconfirmed that to the VBA that we would be willing and to work with the VA and institutions and SCOs in getting that done. So then in September of 2016, as you all probably know, the VBA backed off of emphasis on the comparison tool because of the data that was coming out of there, and then any talk about our proposal kind of went away. And then it brings us to January of 2017. So they had at the Student Veteran of America National Conference, the VBA and the Clearinghouse co-presented the NVEST research results. NVEST, of course, is the Veterans Education Success Tracker tool. It was a collaboration between the VBA, the SVA, and the Clearinghouse on really talking about completion data for veterans who received education benefits. So that was kind of a great project to work on together, and the Clearinghouse was on a panel with General Worley, and it was a great outcome there. And at that meeting, he committed to further exploration of doing more work with the Clearinghouse. So that was great. So where are we today? Well, we heard. I think it was at that meeting, or it might have been the annual NAVPA conference, where I learned, because I was actually at that conference, that the VA cert work had slowed down, maybe even delayed, which to us at the Clearinghouse sounded like a potential opportunity, because we knew that was one of the reasons why they weren't pursuing any work with us, because they wanted to get that done. Meanwhile, we were meeting with Senate and House representatives to discuss the opportunities. Since it had been 3 years since we've been talking about this, it started to get the attention of folks, and so we have a lawyer on staff that is our government relations person, and he set up meetings, and we kept the House and Senate representatives up to date on our proposal. And then, of course, we got the wonderful letter from MHEC around supporting the proposals, as well as Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, and John Tester from Montana wrote letters of support to the Clearinghouse. I'm sorry, for the Clearinghouse project. They sent those letters to VA membership. Again, I mentioned the co-presentation around the findings, and the slide is getting a little grainy to me. I hope you all are able to see it as well. But the last bullet is we had set up another meeting with SVA or with VBA for March 20th last week, but ultimately that was canceled. And this slide says no new date has been established, but I know that our CEO Rick Torres and General Worley have been in communication as late as Friday to try to get something on the books for this week, and really just about kind of rekindling the conversation and to see if there's anything that we can do to help. Meanwhile, we've had lots of support from your colleagues and the education community. Continuing, this is just a sample. This is just a listing of the institutions that have signed up either on our website or subscribed to our blog about the proposal. And others have not only signed up to be, to show their support, but others have signed up to say, hey, we would be willing to even help you test the solution, that whatever you come up with. And this is at the bottom is a quote. We have a website which you'll see in a minute about how to get involved, and the associate registrar from Columbia College in Missouri stated, our school has a 36% military veteran population, and we have over a dozen branch campuses on military bases. We think we could offer excellent support and feedback. So just a tremendous amount of support for this. And again, our position at this point, and what we're talking about with the Veterans Administration, is that this is not a clearinghouse proposal. Okay, yes, we are a key player in the proposal because we're the organization that has the relationship with institutions, that has the technology that could enable this improved file transfer of data. But this is not our project. We are a nonprofit organization with the mission of helping education, and it is really coming from education institutions, not from the clearinghouse. So that's the key message. I think it was that somewhere along the way it was kind of perceived as something that the clearinghouse was pushing for. And again, we don't have our own agenda. We have a very clearly stated mission statement, and we are really responding to requests from institutions on moving this forward. We are also aware that in the coming days, the University of Missouri system is going to send a similar letter of support, as well as the University of Texas system. And again, I think that is just going to continue to send the message to the VA that institutions want this and are really in favor of the VA working with institutions and with the clearinghouse in improving the process in some way, shape, or form. We have an upcoming webinar in May, and you will be able to get information on that on our website as well. As I mentioned, Rick Torres, our CEO, is doing a presentation. He's doing a panel presentation, and on that panel will be several of the folks that I mentioned earlier in this presentation that will be at ACRO. Again, that's in Minneapolis, and they will be talking about the opportunity as well. How to get involved and stay informed. So we have the University of Texas is hosting a listserv that you can join and be a part of. And then the Clearinghouse has an informational website, studentclearinghouse.info/studentvets, where you'll be able to look at, see presentations, see progress, sign up to express your support, as well as other information as we move this proposal forward. And other steps you can take today, if you're at an institution and you're a veteran program administrator or an SCO, get together with your registrar and talk about adding those veteran flags to the file that they're currently submitting to us. This will allow the more use of our Student Tracker College and University tool that will help track progression, retention, and completion for veterans. And at your institution, just simply raising awareness within the institution, your institution, of this opportunity, and then within your state, possibly joining other state schools who have been who may have been speaking with their congressional representatives about the opportunity, and then just continue talking amongst yourselves and amongst your peers about what might be possible, and helping move this forward. And so with that, takes me to the end of my presentation, and it looks like we have about 15 minutes for questions, which I'll be happy to take. At this point, I think I'm going to hand it back over to Jennifer.
Yep, I'm here. All right. Well, thank you, Doug, for your presentation. And we're going to begin to go through the questions. If there are some that we don't get to, we will follow up. But the first question that we have is, earlier you mentioned that registrar offices are reporting veteran status. Is this the traditional was on active duty, now separated service with other than dishonorable discharge definition, or for veterans what the Department of Education uses, or are you also including the National Guard Reserve still on active duty definition? The traditional definition compared to VA-ONCE would not match.
Yeah, that's a good point. We are We are using the existing definition as it is defined, I believe, by the Department of Education. So that is something that we would have to work through if we were going to have to, perhaps we need to expand that if we're going to be also including or reporting on veteran status directly to the VA.
All right, next question. What is the percentage of those leaving 2-year institutions transferring to a 4-year institution?
Let's see. Let me reread that question here.
What's the percentage of those leaving a 2-year institution?
Yes.
Yep, sorry.
I don't have that information off the top of my head. Let me see if I can point you to that. Let's go to the next question while I do a quick research on that.
All right. I may have missed it, but are the full-time models the only ones you're constructing or just examples for this webinar? If the former, how are we capturing presumably large numbers of part-time students?
Oh, no, it's part-time as well. We're not. Today we get enrollment status from institutions that indicate full-time, half-time, or less than half-time, and we're reporting on all of those, not just full-time. Some of the reports that I showed you were just examples of measuring outcomes, and the first definition of success as defined by the federal government has been really first-time, full-time. So those are those reports that we shared, but we can break that out in our research department on any number, in any way we wanted to. We could do first-time, part-time, and generate reports on that as well.
All right, next question. While I appreciate step 1, I have a lot of worries about step 2. For example, what would ensure that a Chapter 1606 student does not receive funding from multiple sources for the same courses, can't use 1606 and tuition assistance for the same classes? Another example is, what if a student veteran does not want to use his/her VA benefits for a given semester?
Yeah, so we would have, so let's see, to answer the first question, I believe we should be able to help solve that if we are getting veteran data from many institutions, or I should say all of the institutions, because then we would be able to create some edits that as we were receiving data, we could stop and say, whoa, this student is claiming benefits from institution A, and now we just got a record that says they're claiming benefits from institution B. So that's something that we could probably help in solving if we were acting as that clearinghouse role in the middle. And then the second half of that question was, I know for a fact that students do, they will choose when and when not to use their benefits, and if they are not using their benefits for a semester, then we would have to work out in our file exchange an indication that they are not using it. So I know that sounds simplistic, but for example, in today's world, we get data from higher ed institutions for all of their students, regardless of whether they're using their Title IV federal student aid benefits or not. So we bring that data into our database, and then if they are not using benefits, we do not report them to the Department of Education today. So we could work out similar rules where if they cease using the benefit, we would then, of course, either cease reporting or indicate that they are no longer using the benefits.
Okay, next question. Are tuition and fees something currently reported to NSC? If not, that would become something that gets reported, or would SCOs still have to do that part?
Today we do not receive tuition and fees information. That is something that we would have to work with the with institutions, and in fact, that group of registrars and SCOs that we pulled together a couple of years ago actually defined file layouts that we could use to get all of that information from the institution. Then we would have to, of course, work out with the institution how we extract that data from their systems to include in the file, and that's where you might have to make extract changes to student information systems, et cetera. But those folks have worked out actual file layouts that we would be able to use to receive that data.
All right, next question. Who should we contact to volunteer for the beta testing?
I would say go to the clearinghouse.info website, and there is a form there that you can enter your information and indicate what level of participation you would like to be involved in.
All right. I've heard institutions and representatives from NAVPA who are on board with the SAM information but are very leery of using the clearinghouse as a way to submit certs. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So I believe that the SAM framework is a very successful and a very simple one, because actually it puts institutions in control of controlling the output and controlling the reports. So I agree that there are folks who are on board with that. I think the reason that folks are leery about submitting certs is literally the complexity of it, because it is complex, and we certainly wouldn't be able to create something that could be better than that if we don't involve institutions and we don't involve SCOs and completely test that out in order to make it better. And of course, we're going to need the Veterans Administration to partner with on that as well, because if we're going to be sending them data, they need to define how they want to receive the data, and it certainly won't be successful without them involved as well.
All right. I think we kind of addressed this one, but are you taking more volunteers?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Next question. I guess it's more of a statement, but I suspect it would be hard to track the success of community colleges if our job includes preparing vets to attend four-year college. This isn't the forum to bring up this question, but it would be nice to include in the study. The slide didn't show that percentage, just that student transferred.
Yeah, this is a huge, I think if I'm hearing this correctly, two-year colleges, community colleges, do actually play a big role in a student's success. So if a student, even in today's world, if we don't even think about veterans for a minute, if a student attends a community college for a year and then transfers to a 4-year and 3 years later gets a degree, the 2-year college doesn't get any credit for that. All they see and all what it looks like for them is a dropout or a transfer out. And the clearinghouse is all about helping those community colleges claim their portion of their contribution to that successful outcome. And we do work with community colleges today through our student tracker and through our research center organization to create reports that help them show their contribution to the success.
All right, I can actually answer this one. How soon will this webinar be available on the MEC website? And it will be up as soon as the webinar is over. There will be a link posted at the end of the slide deck. Next question, is there a veteran flag indicator programmable across all student information systems such as PeopleSoft, Banner, etc.?
So the veteran flag is currently programmed in to be included as a field in the output file that gets sent to the clearinghouse today. The question, I think, gets to how well populated is that field in the SIS, and that's probably a school-by-school answer, because maybe some schools are using it fully, some maybe only using it partially, et cetera. But the field is in there, and again, I'm not quite sure across the different SIS systems how it gets populated or where that data comes from, but it's certainly included in the output extract file that comes to the clearinghouse.
Okay. Have you worked with the branches of the military for tuition assistance programs?
Not yet.
Although I can see a big benefit to completion data, many SCOs are very concerned about the many factors of the certification process. Your list of requirements for reporting was missing factors such as credits, online versus resident, tuition and fees, yellow ribbon, mitigating circumstances, to name a few. Also multiple course dates within a term.
Yeah, I agree with you completely that it is very complicated. And again, what we didn't include in this presentation were the detailed requirements about all of those fields, such as credits, online versus residence, tuition, et cetera. But the group of folks that worked on this actually did come up with file layouts and so forth in order to include that. Now again, it would be a matter of where does that data get populated? Where's that data coming from within the institution's systems? And that's the second half of the complexity, is how do you get that data out of the system and into the file. But I definitely agree with that. I think that's why we're trying to start easy with completion data and then move forward as everyone gets comfortable working with everyone about tackling more complex problems going forward.
All right. Are you separating data from veterans and their dependents?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
All right. How would the NSC know how to report outside tuition support to be deducted from tuition and fees?
Another complexity question that I don't have the answer to right now. I think you're I guess it depends on where does that outside tuition support information come from. If we knew that, then we could work on a way to have it being deducted from tuition and fees.
Okay. Can you give the website again for more information, please?
Yep, I'll click on that slide. It's studentclearinghouse.info/studentvets. I'm displaying the slide right now.
Sure. What checks would be put in place to ensure that classes are required for graduation for purposes of benefit payments?
I'm not sure about that. Again, I'd have to go back to the working group and see if they covered off on that requirement in their initial conversations.
Sure. Would NSC help manage yellow ribbon awards?
Again, I think that depends. I don't see why not, but again, I think that's part of the the complexity around the requirements and how we're going to move data and report that information between the institution and the school and the VA.
And the last question I've got, currently we submit NSC files every 30 days. Is that acceptable to the VA, or are they expecting status changes sooner?
Certainly for completion data, that is acceptable. For status changes, I guess I would ask how frequently how soon folks are required to report status changes today. We may have to speed up or increase the reporting frequency from institutions to the clearinghouse in order to meet whatever the VA requires as a time frame.
All right, we got one more that's popped up. Is there any concern for losing customer service to the veteran?
Well, that's interesting because everyone that we've spoken to believes that customer service for the veteran will be improved only because the amount of administrative work can get cut down, and there could be more time actually spent talking with and advising veterans. So we certainly in no way, shape, or form would ever want there to be a decrease in customer service to the veteran. This has always been about increasing customer service to the veteran. So I want to address the first question. So we have a separate research organization at the Clearinghouse, and the website is nscresearchcenter.org. Maybe you can type that into the answer, nscresearchcenter.org. that has lots of snapshots reports and signature reports about enrollment patterns and completion data across 2-year, 4-year, et cetera. Huge amount of information there. We do those reports at certain times during the year, and we also do, that group also does customized reporting should maybe a community college system might want to get some customized reporting to show outcomes for a certain set of students that came through their system as well. But it's a huge resource to institutions.
All right, we do have one more question, but before that, since we are at the end of our scheduled time, I did want to point out our contact information if you did have follow-up questions. And if you go to mec.org/MCMC, you can find all of our resources available, including a link to this presentation. The last question I had is, would the NSC report enrollment to the VA prior to the start of the term?
Today we only get information, the first data that we get from the institution comes right after the start of the term. So the schools don't report a student status, enrollment status, until they know the student has arrived and a couple of days of classes have gone by. So currently I would say no to that, although again we do have some institutions that send us what we call early registration data, where we do get that information, but we don't actually report that to the Department of Education. We hold on to that for the purposes of allowing the students to get student discounts from various service providers. So again, I think we could change the reporting timing as necessary once we get requirements and so forth for the project. Well, I certainly thank everyone today for joining, and it's been my pleasure. And again, please feel free to send questions or go to our website and get more information.
Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.